Starting a business with no money. Hi, I'm Lucy Griffiths, and I've been in business about 10 years now, and I started my side hustle, and I really strongly recommend a side hustle, when I was working as a journalist and I was doing shifts. So I would do shift work. I'd do 4 days on. So sometimes they'd be early, start at 4 a.m. Sometimes they'd be like the day shift, and sometimes it was the night shift. But I'd do 4 days on, 4 days off. And it meant that I had 4 days to catch up on sleep, but to focus on my business. And at the time I was living in the Middle East, I was living in Qatar, and I was working as a journalist as my day job. And then on my days off, I was working and setting up my side hustle. I was creating a blog, I was creating content, creating posts, and I was really focused on making as much content as possible and building up my coaching clients. And it was a lot of work. It was exhausting and draining at times. Building a website, doing all of the things, building a logo. And at the time, there wasn't Canva, there wasn't, the things that didn't exist in the same way that they do now. But I started small, and I started as a side hustle. And then I fell pregnant. I was setting up Airbnbs and that gave me passive income. I was running Airbnbs. And then I got back into coaching when my baby was about 6 months old. And so that has all been a journey. And at times it was exhausting and draining. But I really strongly recommend that you start when you just start, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to wait until I've got enough money to do this, or wait until I've done this thing. Because waiting is never going to be the right time. It's never going to be that moment where you think, oh, it's the perfect time to start right now. So you might as well start small and start scrappy and just experiment and see what works. And the thing is that when you're first starting out, you don't know what is going to work. You don't know what content is going to appeal to people. You don't know how your message is going to land. And you don't know exactly, like you might have a kind of idea of I know I want to do this, but you don't know kind of what your market is. And you have to really test and listen to the market and see, do they want this? Like I started out thinking, oh, I'm going to coach mums because I've just had a baby, so I'm going to coach mums. And before that, I was coaching journalists, and I was working a lot with refugees because there was a time before I was living in Qatar where I was really set up, and I was doing my training, and I was living in Iraq. I was doing my training, my coaching postgraduate diploma, and then my master's. And I was literally practicing on the people that I was working with. And I was setting up a TV station in Iraq, and so it was people around me who had lots of PTSD and trauma. So I focused my coaching on PTSD and trauma. And then gradually it evolved. And once I'd had my baby, I was like, okay, maybe that's not the right thing. So I evolved again into kind of mum coaching. I was like, no, that's not quite right. And then I evolved into helping people get confident on camera and make video. But that was a journey and evolution. And it was a lot to do with my confidence. I think I lost my confidence in being like, oh, I'm not a specialist to talk about PTSD and trauma. And then I felt like, oh, I've got 2 years experience of being a mum, but I've got all of these years working in TV. Why am I excluding those stories just to talk about mum stories? And so by having all of those things that I could bring to the table, I did talk about trauma, and I did talk about being a mom and a parent, and also about being confident on camera. It allowed me to kind of shape who I was and build a personal brand. Otherwise I felt stifled if I was just talking about motherhood. And that's the thing, that you can evolve. Your business can evolve. It's really important to allow yourself that space to evolve. And if you are struggling for cash, if you are worrying about the next paycheck, then you don't have that creative freedom. You don't have that kind of expansiveness of imagination that you have when you are not worrying about the next paycheck. So having it as a side hustle while you might be exhausted and drained gives you that safety net so that you can be like, I'm going to experiment with this. I'm going to see what works. And it doesn't matter if it's not quite right in the beginning, because you've experimented and you've kind of seen what works. And, you know, so I carried on experimenting like that because I was on maternity leave. And also I then, once I decided I wasn't going back to my full-time job as a journalist, I then was running Airbnb. So I was doing the admin, I was managing those. I wasn't doing the cleaning, but I was doing everything else. I was greeting the guests, doing all of that. And I was doing some for ones in London, some for ones in Edinburgh. And I'd go up to Edinburgh a lot and I'd be renovating properties and kind of turning them into Airbnbs. And so that was really, you know, and I was doing it with my son in tow, bless him. You know, he was absolutely with me building the business. But because I had that as a cushion, plus I was then coaching, it meant I had that freedom to experiment and work out what worked, rather than being like, oh, I've got to make money right now. And it gives you, it allows you to kind of find your feet, especially when, like me, I've always been creative, but I'm not necessarily business minded. So I had to learn that. And that's been a growth for me in the last 7 years, where I've really had to learn, you know, what's my profit, what's my loss, what's my, you know, net and gross, and all of those kind of business terminology, which in the beginning I didn't really understand. And, you know, so understanding, okay, this is what's coming into the business, this is what's going out, and this is what you're left with. And then being able to, you know, play with that and thinking, how can I make myself as profitable as possible? How can I leverage what I do and, you know, reduce this cost or do this, or, you know, and all of those things where you shape the business by working out, this is what works for me, this is what I can do, and this is what I'm good at. And then I'm going to go all in on that. But also, I'm good at that, so I don't need to hire people for that. I'm going to go all in on this. That's my strength, that's my passion. And then outsource the things that you struggle with more, or you just don't enjoy so much. So that might be doing some of the admin, or it might be, even in the beginning, having a cleaner so that they're doing the cleaning of the house so that you can focus on the profitability and really driving that profit as much as possible for the business. But that takes time. That takes, you know, it's not an immediately dive into something. And one of the biggest mistakes that I sort of went through on this journey was that I sort of listened to those like, outsource this thing. And so I felt like, you know, there were times where I was like, oh, I need to outsource. But it was outsourcing for the sake of outsourcing, rather than it being, this is what I need to do. And so I would really say to you, pause. It's okay to learn, and it's okay to keep going with your day job. You know, my favorite example of this is Sarah Blakely from Spank, Sarah Blakely. And she had her day job as a national salesperson. I can't remember what she was selling, but she also had Spanks. And so she'd go everywhere she went with her day job. She'd be like, oh, I'll go and see it in Nordstrom, and, you know, go and arrange Spanks on the counter and do all of those things. And she was quite a disruptor in the way that she operated. She'd sneak in and move the merchandise to the front of the store, or put them on the tills, or all of those things, in order to leverage Spanks as much as possible. And that's the thing, that if you can keep going in your day job and have your side hustle, it makes you in a much stronger position. It means that you can make much better business decisions, because you can afford to pay for that person to build a sales page if that's the thing you struggle with, or if you want to run Facebook ads or YouTube ads, you can afford to do that because you've got a cushion, rather than worrying like, oh, if I spend my money on that, then there's no money to pay myself a salary. And so allow yourself, it's okay to have a side hustle for as long as possible, and then it will suddenly get to a point where there's that enough kind of lift off, if you're thinking like a plane where you can take the wheels up, lift them up and off you fly. But don't do it too soon. It's okay to have the side hustle. And it's okay to be scrappy. I mean, I think one of the benefits of the world that we live in right now is that you can be scrappy. We are so lucky we have free internet and we can reach anybody in the world. Like, I don't know how many people are going to see this video. It might be 50, it might be 5,000, it might be 500,000 for all I know. And that's the thing, that you have the potential to reach as many people as possible in infinite ways. But it's really about, being scrappy, getting your story out there and finding those ways to connect with as many people as possible, because it's about building connection. And the second thing with the world that we live in right now, that we can not only reach so many people through social media, through YouTube, we can also leverage the tools of AI in an amazing way. Like this video, the title of this video is created through AI. And I will probably take this video title and say, write me a blog post. And while I'm not going to use that blog post word for word, I'm going to take the essence of it to turn it into a blog post for my website, which means it's, good search related content. And so it's really powerful when you are able to leverage those tools where you can say, I'm going to use AI to help me as much as possible. So it means it cuts down, it streamlines my system, simplifies what I do, makes it as easy as possible so that I can focus on being as profitable as possible, and I'll stay in my day job. So I'm spending less money, I'm being as streamlined as possible. And then, things can really leverage, take off, you plow everything into the business so that you can make as much profit as possible in the long run. I hope this video has inspired you. You do not have to feel like businesses are started on masses of money. They are not. One of the things I think that's really important to mention within that is, having your idea, having your concept, but also making sure you test and validate. So have that idea, be scrappy with it, like I talked about, but also then test it, ask people. It doesn't cost much money to set up like a WhatsApp group to get feedback on an idea. And if you have 50 people joining that WhatsApp group, then you might be like, maybe interested. But if you have 5,000, you know that they're interested. And in the same way, you can make social media posts, you can ask people questions, you can get that feedback, get those responses. And so having that direct feedback, getting that idea, validating that idea, understanding, yes, people want this or maybe not, that can be the next stage for you then to say, right, if you want to know more about this, if you love this idea, join the waitlist to find out more. Be in the gang as soon as it's released, as soon as it's launched. And you'll know, is there interest? I was launching a mastermind a year or two ago, and there were a few people on the wait list, but not the numbers that I needed and wanted. And I was like, okay, this is not the right time. Can that idea move on to the next? And that's where it's really useful. I didn't waste any time. I sent out like 5 emails, maybe less, maybe 3 emails, built a wait list, but that was it. And so you can have these ideas and you can be rough and ready and test, build a WhatsApp group really easily, post some content on social media and see what people have to say, see what the feedback is for you then to move forward. And that's the amazing thing. You have the potential to build a massive audience and you have the potential to get feedback on your idea before you even launch. So it gives you that freedom, that flexibility. So you know where you stand and is this a safe point for me to leap before you are spending any money? Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you again soon. If you liked it, please hit the button below to subscribe. I'll see you again soon. Bye, bye, bye.